Hi guys, my name is Tyler with Discover Recovery, and tonight it is October 8th, 2016, 10:58 p.m. And I just wanted to talk about mental illness. I wanted to make the topic mental illness tonight because I have a lot of experience with mental illness since 2013 in November, so roughly 3 years. I have been diagnosed with mental illness maybe over 10 times. But with my first experience in 2013, November, I was going to an AA meeting. And if you don't know what AA stands for, it stands for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I used to always go to this house. It's like 15-minute drive away from the house I'm in now, which is my parents' house in Ashburn, Northern Virginia. So I should say also, I just come back from a yoga retreat. So I was at a ashram, which means place of retreat in Southern Virginia. And I was there for about 5 days, camping in the woods, and then it got too cold and my tent got flooded with water, and then the water froze over. So I would have basically been sleeping on an ice sheet. But fortunately, the people who worked there, like I had to pay to go there and everything. These people let me into their dormitories, and it was like my first initiation into the the yoga scene, really, because the guy who founded the place was here in the 60s. If you know anything about yoga, you probably know the name Iyengar, or there's also a practice of yoga called Iyengar yoga. And he and the guy who founded Yogaville, they sort of brought yoga here to the States in the 60s. So I went to this place for about 5 days. It's not really important, but I get back, and I'd also resigned from my job. I was working in a grocery store, and I said I basically don't want to be here anymore. I had enough money saved up. I was still at my parents' house. So I decided to go to Yogaville and do something that I wanted to do for once. So I thought, it was a good decision and everything. But when I came back, I was immediately going back to this AA meeting in Sterling, 15 minutes away from my parents' house. And, it was just all about getting a job again. But my true dream at the time, my goal in life at the time was to become a yoga instructor. So that's mainly what I wanted to focus on. But I'd get caught up in this life, going to the stepping stones, meeting these guys, and just basically smoking cigarettes and talking about our stories and everything, our experience, strength, and hope. That's mainly what you talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous or any anonymous program. So I go back, I think it's like, well, basically what happened was I got into an argument with my parents, and that wasn't an unusual thing at the time. So got into another argument, and basically I wasn't allowed to drive anywhere. My parents had taken my keys from me. It was my car, but they were helping me out. Like we were kind of like in a mutual agreement to help each other out. So I would help out around the house, and they'd help me with car insurance, like pay my bills and stuff. And that's still the situation today. But anyway, I basically decided that since I wasn't able to drive to this meeting called the Stepping Stones, I said I'd walk there. So I decided to walk to Sterling, and not only did I walk there, but I had a bandana, I'll just call it, but it was like clear, it was like a lot bigger. I basically tied it to my belt straps, and then tied it around my face and tied it behind my back. So it was basically this veil was just covering my face. And then I tucked my shirt in, and I had a Bible sticking out of my pants. So I looked kind of kind of like a lunatic. Like people didn't really know what I was doing, and I took the bike trail. I headed east. I took the bike trail, and then I got on the road and I was walking through the street. And then when I first got to the house, I see this guy named Fred, and Fred was dying of cancer. Not only was he dying of cancer, he was smoking cigarettes every day. And this is just to say that's the type of environment I was in. So it was just another typical day, another typical meeting. Um, I'd been sober for about, and when I say sober, it means I'd abstained from alcohol and, Schedule One drugs like marijuana, acid, shrooms, stuff like that for 7 months around this time. And I'd eventually make it another 2 months. But to make a long story short, my first introduction into the hospitals. So that night I get there, or that afternoon I get there and I have a conversation with Fred. There's a meeting going on. And then what I recall going into this next meeting, it probably is a 5 o'clock meeting, and then following the 5 o'clock meeting, there'd be an 8 o'clock meeting. But after I got out of this 5 o'clock meeting, there wasn't something right. And I basically was just claiming that everybody was fake or infactual with what they were saying. They thought they had doctoral advice, but they were really just good liars. It was kind of like something like that. And if you have like wives and kids and everything, well, why are you coming up here anyway? Because I was dealing with relationship problems myself, but that's another story. So gets to the point where I'm just on this couch and I'm being inverbal, so I wasn't verbally talking or communicating to anyone. Maybe a little bit of eye contact just to, uh, honor somebody's opinion, like what they thought I would do. But like leading up to this, I'd never really been given the advice that I need mental health help, so there was never really any concerns. But or this particular afternoon leading into the night was a little bit different. I was saying things without being spoken to, just things of that nature. So it wasn't the best, I would say, night I had because my parents came in. There was people, there was people coming in, talking to me, sitting down, just shooting the shit basically, and just again, I was irresponsive to everybody, not verbally speaking to anyone, just making eye contact at the most, and just smoking cigarette after cigarette basically. So they decided to call the cops because that was kind of like my options were to either start communicating with these people or to just or the cops are going to get involved. So I let the cops get involved. The cops came. There was about 3 or 4 officers, with their guns and handcuffs and everything, just hovering over me. And they were basically saying, like, Tyler, if you don't communicate with us, we're going to have to use force and everything. So I complied. They arrested me, threw me in the back of a cop car, and took me to a hospital that was west. And it was about a 30-minute drive to this hospital. So I was basically put into what one would call like a psych ward environment. You may or may not have heard about people going to psych wards, but I was put into a psych ward for my first time November 2013, and it's like very ingrained in my mind because when I got there, I was in a room. I was like weighed. Well, first of all, they might have took my blood, but I don't know. I don't really know about that, but they were just there was nurses and everything taking my blood pressure, so on and so forth. But then they put me in this room and they start telling me that I need this medication to calm me down. And I start refusing. I start, saying I don't need the medication. I'm good. I'm fine. Just completely flat out refusing the medication and everything. They say if you're not gonna comply with us and take the medication, we're gonna have to use force. So I'm like, this time with these nurses and security guards or whatever and everything, I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna take the medication. You're gonna have to make me take the medication. Well, what happens is I end up taking the medication, like just the pill, initially, like I took the pills, but now there's like a larger controversy with me having to be in the hospital and everything against my will. So I don't want to be in the hospital. That's it. That's it. I just don't want to be in the hospital. So I'm arguing with these people and it's very late. at night by now, or it's going, it's going into the night. Maybe it's not even midnight yet, but everybody has to be, in their own rooms, and you just have to go to sleep. You can't do anything. You may have been able to ask for a Bible, but I couldn't read. I was just so irritated, so irritable and agitated by the whole scenario, situation, what have you. So I'm arguing with these people, and I say to myself, like, this is a joke, like I can't be here. So I basically like go out into the room, and I recall just like screaming at these people because well, first I pleaded, to get out of the hospital, or was asking questions like, why can't I get out of the hospital? And once I realized I was fucked, and then, that was it. Like I took off all my clothes, and like I was naked, and I basically just curled up in a ball and faced this door. I couldn't really imagine what I looked like, and I don't really want to, so I wouldn't try to either. But basically, they say, put your clothes back on. I refuse, and I get held down, by like seven or eight people. I mean, I put my clothes on before this. I wasn't naked while they were all holding me down, but once I realized they were actually going to use force, because I've never been like aggravated in that type of manner. Like I've never been really so anti-authority, up until this point, November 2013, where they start, grabbing me and holding me down. All males, no females are holding me down, but there is one female who is like the high, like the coordinator or the director or something, who's telling me, what's going on and what's happening, trying to keep me calm. But there's nothing keeping me calm at this point. Like I flat out had it. I don't want to be in a psych ward anymore. So they hold me down though. I'm giving them a little bit of slack or whatever, leniency, just to do it. Like I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So um, they hold me down and they stick me in the buttocks, I think, with something called Haldol, and I still fought with these officers and everything when they said they put me into the room. They put me into this room uh, by force and everything. And so I'm in the room, and then I get like before they can even close the door, like they're saying goodnight or something. Like I grab the plastic mattress I grab this plastic mattress, and I put this plastic mattress like in between the door and the where it closes and everything. And I just don't let them close the door or anything, and I'm like biting the mattress, and they're just like, we gotta close the door. And they finally get the door closed, and then I recall it not being able to open, but in the morning, it could open and everything. So I couldn't even go out to go to the bathroom, because I mean I was like, and then because I even like pushed a button and said like I couldn't get out, and they were like, we'll unlock it or anything, but I just had it with these people. They were good. They weren't bad people. They were just you know just messing with the wrong dude that night. So I even go to the bathroom in the room, take off all my clothes because of medicine, this Haldol stuff this medicine, but this Haldol stuff that they stuck me in the butt with, like, gives me like a really weird reaction. Like wasn't highly allergic to it, but I am experiencing like extreme difficulty in relaxing my body, and I thought it was supposed to have the opposite effect. So I'm just like, this is all backwards, because this Haldol goes into my body, and I'm supposed to be laying down asleep, but I don't know if it was my nerves. I don't really think it is my nerves, because I can usually recover faster from a lot of controversy, like conflict and affliction and everything, pretty quickly. I can just walk away from things, but in this case I wasn't allowed to walk away because I wasn't even allowed to leave the room. They said they were unlocking the door, so I could go to the bathroom and everything, but no, this was my first experience in a psych ward and everything, and I'm just trying to keep it all together. So I eventually do fall asleep, and I wake up and I'm just like, wow. Like I woke up, with feelings of like a hangover, like feelings of like, I've just had the worst night of my life, like that kind of feeling. And even prior to this, I've been to jail and everything. So even this was just a different experience, not more or less worse, but it was not a pleasant. I wasn't having pleasant feelings about it at all. So now I'm seeing the other patients and everything, and my mind was just being opened up to the severity of my situation. I didn't think I was as sick as these other people, but these other people, had probably been, if not in this psych ward, in other psych wards before. And there's only one person that I really remember from the psych ward this time. And I don't know if, I meet him later on down the line, because I would eventually go back to the Stepping Stones, AA meetings in general. And thinking about it now, I do feel like I would see him again. But at the same time, at any rate, I met this guy in the psych ward, and he must have heard me screaming like the night before, like just screaming at people, being verbally abusive, high pitched screaming, even possibly, because he wrote down maybe on like 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces of paper, like revelations, these Bible verses of like the Our Father prayer. He wrote down all this stuff, in cursive, and it was really cool. It was unique. But then, I'd see him in the place where we would eat. It's not really a cafeteria. It's just a bunch of round tables with a TV, and the TV was usually going during while we would eat. Like the TV was on pretty much all day, which was pretty aggravating too. I mean, they would turn it off when we'd sleep, but I mean, even having the TV on when you're eating in a psych ward, for your first time. But I'd see this guy who who wrote all the letters and everything, and he'd like have his plate of food. He'd have his plate of food in front of him, and he'd be like doing all this, like he'd be blessing it. So he was blessing his food, and I was like, I had no idea, about it, and I wouldn't even really remember it much in the future. Just talking about it now, like blessing food, would be a big deal to me. If I could take it more seriously, I would want to take it more seriously. Therefore, I do take it more seriously. But it was, I don't really remember much. That was like because my initial experience when I got there, and then the next morning when that great dude wrote down uh, all of this stuff about God and everything, it was pretty cool. So this is just my first experience in a psych ward, and there would be about 15, 16, maybe 17 more times that I would be in a psych ward. But anyway, in November when I get out, they put me. I wasn't in there that long. They usually I wasn't suicidal or anything. I was just I was basically just arrested for my behavior. So I realized that I needed to change my behavior, and the only action that I really had, the only choice I really had at the time to, what I was being said was, if I wanted to function in society, then I have to go on medication. I have to take these medications, get a prescription and everything to go get these medications. And mind you, I hadn't had a prescription for for drugs. I mean, I know these are pharmaceuticals, but I hadn't had a prescription for anything since I was living in California, and that would be for marijuana. And I wanted to use it recreationally. I told that doctor who gave me the prescription for marijuana. I told him that I was getting pains in my leg, like I had really bad arthritis from breaking my leg and my bones. But I just wanted to use marijuana recreationally, so I wasn't using it as a medicine. So they wanted to give me this new medicine, and all I'd really ever heard about, the medicine that the pharmaceutical companies would give you were negative stories. Like, and even when I got them, I'd hear about, well, it may cause suicidal ideations, which are suicidal thoughts. So one of the side effects of taking a medication is suicide. Like, that just doesn't sound right. That just doesn't sound like something I want to do. But I had to do it. Like, I had to do it basically for everybody else, if not myself, in order to keep going. Um, and then I wanted to say too, like, I didn't even take painkillers I took painkillers for the first week when I broke my leg. Like I would eventually tell this marijuana doctor that I would get arthritis and everything in my legs, but no, like I broke my leg and I didn't even really take the Oxycontin or Oxycodone or whatever they'd give me. I'd eventually use that stuff recreationally, injecting it into my arm or taking pills of it, swallowing pills of it or snorting it. So I mean, I have a lot of experience not only with doing drugs, but learning about how to stay off drugs, solutions, things of that nature, spirituality as well. So, and to be quite honest with you, today I don't really think any of those, just for the record, I don't think that any of those experiences while on drugs were really spiritual experiences. I don't think those were true. I don't think I think they were just numbing me. So you see, I had an internal affliction that I wasn't really dealing with, conflict or affliction that I wasn't dealing with inside. So I'll use these drugs, and I still have experiences from using those drugs, but they didn't help me out in the long run. They really just attributed to my mental illness. They really did just attribute to my bipolar disorder. So back to the story, when I get out in November 2013, they say I have schizoaffective disorder and also bipolar disorder. So that's what I was initially told. And I was put on some sort of medication. I immediately start gaining weight. I call my friend from AA, and he tells me about this other medication that has worked great for him, and he's been on for a while, and he's also been schizoaffective for a while. So he tells me about this medication, and yeah, it was called Invega. So I go on this Invega for a little bit, and it is what it is. I didn't want to be on that either. It didn't really help me out much, and I was still smoking cigarettes heavy, like I still am doing today, which I'm not proud of, but it's something I need to work on, something I need to make these videos for so I can get off of them. Just occupy my time with something else, other than watching videos all day and smoking cigarettes all day while doing that. So, yeah, it's, uh, you know, going into, so what happens is I relapse on alcohol, New Year's Eve of 2013. So and I got out of jail March 24th, 2013, and gone back to AA and everything, because I'd also gotten a DUI in January 2013. So I got arrested for that. They took my blood. It was for driving on intoxicated while on marijuana. You don't just have to be drinking while driving to get a ticket in Virginia. So I violate my probation in March, and basically the only thing I'm really allowed to do is go to work or go to AA meetings or, to the gas station. But I'm not allowed to really go out. I'm really not allowed to go out. And I didn't want to go out. That's why I was going to so many AA meetings. I'd probably gone to about 1,000 AA meetings my first year, and that's a lot. 1,000 hours of AA is a lot. And if I didn't go to 1,000 meetings, then I spent 1,500 hours in the rooms of AA, either talking to people before or after meetings, including the meetings themselves. So and this is just in my first year, guys. Like I was highly into the idea of recovery, into the idea of never drinking again, doing drugs again, things of that nature. And I would lose sight of that, and I would get thrown off. But I mean, when I was working with a sponsor, working the steps. I have all the steps of AA. You can look them up, memorize them, like I did. But it's really not going to help you in the long run. What's going to help you in the long run is doing the right thing, is making the right decision. So I don't even know if I get a job, like by January or anything. I don't really. I've had over 20 jobs too. Like I can get into like my jobs stuff too, but eventually I would go just in and out of the psych ward, just in and out, in and out. Like some people I've heard, say, well, once you go in and out over like 10 times, you must be a lifer then. You know, like a there's people who do life in prison, and then there's people who do life in psych wards. And I truly believe that I am capable of being one of those people. I have the potential. You know, people have potential for good things, and they have the potential for bad things. And I have the potential to be a psych ward lifer, to just go in and out continuously of the psych ward. You know, it was going to be, or it will be a year that I've been off marijuana. This December, you know, my ex girlfriend was telling me this, you know, or I was telling her this, and she was saying, well, you know, we should celebrate and everything. But what would be a lot greater achievement, I believe, for myself would be to just stay out of a psych ward. You know, I know that. I know I would be a lot prouder. I'd be a lot more proud of myself. I'd be able to carry myself a lot better if I could just stay out of a psych ward for a year. You know, truly, truly, guys. So, I mean, I would just go in and out, in and out. You know, and every time you go in, you can get every time you go into a psych ward, you basically get evaluated, you get a psychological evaluation, you get put on new meds, and you're supposed to get a new diagnosis, from what I know, because you can ask for like your rap sheet, basically, like when you get out, you know, I mean, I got out a lot of times in like a week, sometimes like 2 weeks, but I've never been in there for like, uh, a month or anything like that. My ex-girlfriend was in there for a long time. Like I don't think it was like, she said it was like 9 months, maybe including these programs and everything. But I know she was in the hospital for at least over a month. And that'll happen to you if you attempt suicide. So, and my heart goes out to anybody who, you know, has people in their lives who've attempted suicide, or have lost people in their lives who have attempted suicide, truly, because, you know, I knew people, my ex-girlfriend knew people, you know, in high school who were committing suicide. And I think I think the problem with suicide is we're not really we're not educated at all on it. So when you hear about it, you just go all out. Like for example, I read this book by Kevin Hines, and it talks about his first suicide attempt, and he jumped off the San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge and survived. You know, he survived, but nevertheless, it was the first time he attempted suicide. My my point is that when you attempt suicide the first time, you're gonna go all out. My ex-girlfriend, for example, Tracy attempted suicide her first time, and that was what put her 9 months in and out of the psych ward and onto this program. So since then, she has attempted suicide again, but she hasn't been able. Her body just is maybe it's really sad to say, but maybe too well adjusted to the type of medication that she wanted to get off on, and that's what's led her to be able to just, you know, overcome it. But I mean, not to say that I wouldn't want anybody to commit suicide. That's just silly and really ignorant. But I mean, it's a serious issue. I know there's a lot of veterans and people who go through sports. My main thing was I went through sports, and then I witnessed a fight, and my friend Ryan Devaney was put into a coma because of the fight. And so I would have a lot of just thoughts about it, like total recall of what was happening a lot. And it would, you know, it's happening to me right now just talking about it. So I haven't really overcome it. I don't think it's something you ever really do overcome. I think it's just something that you need to express either verbally or physically, whether physically through dreams or just talk about it. I talk about it with therapists, you know, so many times. I don't really need to talk about it anymore. It doesn't really bother me, the way it used to. Not to say that I don't get angry anymore. I got angry tonight, but at least I was able to make a good decision and apologize for using my anger. Anger is never the right answer. Fighting is never the answer. Killing is never the right answer. Those are just things I know. You know, defending yourself, it just goes back to, I mean, that just goes back to us defending the country the way we do. I don't think we really necessarily defend the country the way we should. I think we just team up with a bunch of other countries and use imperialism. So that's wrong to me. But back to the story with mental illness. And so in 2013, I would go to my first psych ward. In 2014, I had a job and I was working and I was doing well. I was doing well at this job. I was working 40 hours, working 40 hours a week, putting in the time and everything at a burger place. I was working on being a vegan too because I felt at the time like being a vegan was my only way out of taking the medication, and I didn't want to take the medication. So let me just make sure that you guys can see me and everything because I'm gonna elevate myself. I'm gonna elevate myself a little bit so I can sit down a little bit better. All right, that's good. So yeah, um, I would eventually go. I would eventually be in Florida for a mental health rehabilitation. So not all rehabs are just for people with drugs and everything. If you've dealt with whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, you would know something like that. But I'll talk about anything really you guys want to talk about in the future, or just try to be here for you as a friend or some guidance because I do have a lot of experience with this, with what I'm telling you I have experience for. So I would be in Florida, 2014, mental health, Sylvia Brofman Mental Health Institution in Pompano Beach, Florida, where I basically went in and out 3 times. And also, after that transaction expired, I would go in and out of the psych ward 3 times due to not really being able to sleep or not having the right ways of to communicate my problems out to people. Like I wasn't into making videos back then. I had been making videos since 2011, but being in the environment with other guys, we're all not allowed to drink, use drugs, any of that, which is great. But then at the same time, you still need an outlet, like whether it's the internet, something via expression, doing art. I couldn't really manage doing any of that stuff. I still have trouble with that today. I could meditate, I could do yoga. I mean, I probably did more yoga in 2014 ever in my life. I was doing it like 5, maybe 6 days a week, at least classes 5 days a week, and then doing it on my own a lot. That would be periodically, but I was still doing more yoga. I had more flexibility and all that. For some reason, I can get into lotus position today easier than I could then, probably because I was weighing about 30 pounds more than I am now. And I truly believe I was weighing 30 pounds more than I am now because of the medication I was on, because I was still trying to eat a clean diet. Though I do eat less today, I just don't really, I can't really figure out any. I mean, the circumstances were that I was in this rehab, and right away I found out I have PTSD from seeing Ryan Davini. Uh, it was, and like what was said in court and everything was that he was brutally beaten. The judge decided that he was brutally beaten. So, and he's still been in a coma since. So you can imagine, if you can imagine what that's like, it's really hard. Dealing with like that type of loss and being the guy who may or may not have been able to save everybody from that situation, being the least drunk person. I was drugged up. I took a lot of marijuana, like drinking and drugging. We call that being twisted. And I was very twisted. I was very incoherent. I had very incoherent thoughts. I didn't know what was going on. And then by the time everybody started fighting, I wanted nothing to do with anything anymore. Noticed Ryan was seizuring. I remember foam coming out of his mouth, and then when the ambulance got there, I split because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get into legal trouble, so that was selfish on my part. But at the same time, I did what I had to do, and I've been doing what I've had to do ever since then. But I get post-traumatic stress disorder, like morbid depression, still have schizoaffective disorder, and then I get diagnosed with user cannabis disorder. So and it's basically just I'm dependent on cannabis, and nobody wants to hear about this stuff anymore. Everybody just wants cannabis to be legal, and it's never going to be. I mean, it may get legal, when I'm alive still. Like I'm 24 now, and if I live to be 84, 60 years from now, it might be legal, like federally, but that also means that you'll be able to like take it on That might mean you might be able to take it on airplanes, take it to other countries, if they have legality over it. But the thing is, it has to be decriminalized, so the state deals with you, and you don't have to go out into other jurisdictions and everything, and deal with people. But you don't really want to get into it. I mean, marijuana, is just not a good drug, and I just advice for anybody who doesn't take it, who has someone around them who is taking it. I mean, you might be listening to this message right now high off marijuana, but that's not to say you can't quit. Like, just, I would tell these people that just encourage them to try to quit, and they deny when they deny that, just give them alternatives to what they can do. I mean, picking up tobacco is not the worst thing in the world. Picking up tobacco really isn't the worst thing in the world. I know tobacco causes extreme amount of disease and affliction towards people, and there's a lot of conflict over it, I'm sure. But I got a DUI on marijuana. It's just not worth it. When I was in California smoking illegal, I got very antisocial off of it. I just wanted to be in a place where I couldn't be bothered by people, or I had the right to smoke in my backyard, in my house, whatever it was. I just wanted to be able to smoke it without having to go to jail, basically. But I wasn't ready for what I know now is today is the mental illness. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't expecting it, but mental illness came on a lot, not just because of marijuana, but mainly because of marijuana. Mainly because of marijuana. So user cannabis disorder, that was new to me, but I read a lot about these symptoms, and all of the symptoms line up, and I don't suggest going over the internet and trying to diagnose yourself. I suggest just doing what you do in life, do what you love in life. But if you hear about somebody having a mental illness, just try to educate yourself on that person, or not that person, but that mental illness. And be thoughtful, be mindful of that person's mental illness. Don't just judge somebody so hard because they have a mental illness. It's just not right, and that's what causes, like, for instance, Kevin Smith's situation. Kevin Hines, sorry, the guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge but survived. He wrote a book about it and everything called Cracked Not Broken. It's a great book, but the voices in my head could get so bad, especially when people are telling me, well, I just need medication, and people are telling me you're not right, you're ill, you're mentally ill, you're sick, etc. I just get very discouraged, and the voices in my head just get more abrasive, more invasive, and it's just more abuse. And I just don't like it. I don't like myself when I'm not really openly expressing myself. But at the same time, therapy hasn't worked for me, medication hasn't worked for me. I'm here now telling you that, like, this is pretty much my last option, just to try to spread the word out, that people with mental illness do need help, maybe financially or physically, but it needs to be recognized better, and there needs to be more solutions. There need to be more outlets, and these people shouldn't be shunned. These people shouldn't be shunned just because they're different, or just because they've taken drugs that they didn't want to take, but they're still thinking about, and it's still giving them trauma. I mean, a lot of this comes from just memories that we have, and the memories come in and out. Everybody has memories, and you can't really deny yourself you can't really exempt yourself from mental illness just by never even conducting any thorough research about it. So if you do hear about somebody who has a mental illness, whether it's bipolar, schizoaffective, anxiety, you should educate yourself on these. I need to do a better job myself with that. So, if anybody wants to comment down below, like a family member. I know my mom suffered with depression. She's attempted suicide. I personally have never attempted suicide, but I've definitely been admitted to a psych ward for suicidal ideations, which are, again, ideas, suicidal thoughts, basically. And, it's just not a good feeling. You don't want to feel that. You don't want to have that in your life. That's why it needs to be put out. The air needs to be cleared of it. So I'm fortunate that I have the computer and the technology, the assets, just to be able to do this with you guys. So, I'm very grateful for where I'm at today, and I'm very happy with where I'm at today. I feel good. I don't necessarily feel so good when I'm in a room full of people who are bipolar or depressed because it's just that type of energy. I mean, if you are in that type of situation, either with mental illness or with people in recovery, again, which is like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, you should try very hard to be in an environment that's suitable for you. Because if you're in a house with people doing drugs, alcohol, or just with narcotics and alcohol, you should want to get out of that house. You should just do whatever it takes. Just do whatever it takes, not to go to jail, not to get a record, not to, and then with mental illness, not to have someone die because of you, not to put that like burden on you. And I have been wrong in my past. Like I bullied mentally challenged. I bullied people. I bullied a lot of people. I mean, I just was different in elementary school than I was, in middle school. In elementary school, I was very sports centered, and all I really cared about was sports. I was sports centered, and I was very like up and coming in sports, and I just saw that I was dominating. So I wanted my presence to be known at all times. And this is in elementary. Like I had a very, like one could say, like affluent childhood, growing up in a very affluent neighborhood, affluent uh, places and everything. We're surrounding, not a lot of crime. I mean, I did crime myself. I got arrested and everything. But I mean, back to the mental illness. Mental illness is very, very serious, in my life. So the last time, I mean, um, I lived in Pompano Beach, Florida, like where if you're following Hurricane Matthew, like basically where Hurricane Matthew and everything is hitting and everything right now, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. Went to Fort Lauderdale a couple times for yoga or meet a friend, but no real mental health meetings other than the ones I was being made to go to. But I mean, Sylvia Brofman Mental Health was very good for me in Pompano Beach. I got out, you get like a token saying like good job, pats on the back, hugs and everything from everybody, and it's a good experience. You learn a lot in those experiences, especially your first time. It gets a little redundant afterwards, but you always get something out of it. You always meet someone or have a roommate or fall in love, have a good therapist. Something will happen to you or another that will bring a lot of light, that'll shed a lot of light more, and bring something back. Mind you, there were people, sneaking out and getting drugs. There were people just committing acts that they shouldn't have been or were condoned or could get you in trouble. Like that would happen, but that was later down the road. My first experience in the mental health rehab was like picture perfect. There was nothing wrong with it. I mean, I had one argument with my roommate, but eventually, I mean, I still talk to him today, and that was almost 3 years ago. So yeah, Matthew was a really cool guy, but yeah, his name's Matthew, and the Matthew hurricane's happening right now. That's something else. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what was going on. I'll talk more about mental illness. But yeah, that's pretty much just what I wanted to make the topic today. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. I will definitely be back. Um, but my plan is to just fast. So I have this idea, or I have this plan to fast. I want to fast for a long time, guys. So if you can just give me any communication, any forms of communication at all, just be great. Just comment down below or email me, tylerjohnson.mentalhealth@outlook.com. We can exchange contact information and get in touch if you really want to talk. I don't really have any stipulations or rules or guidelines that I'm running with right now. I'm just going with the flow. But I do need support, and I do need a communication line, sponsorship, mentorship. I need all of that. So if you're willing to contact me, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate it. But I want my fast to start tomorrow, guys. And tomorrow is starting in 18 minutes. So yeah, my main plan is to just abstain from these cigarettes while I'm fasting, and so I got all this water around me now, but I feel like the time is coming, the time is near. So I might as well not indulge one more time, but just really get my mind right for what's really important. So again, I thank you for watching. God bless you. I love you. Have a good night. Watch more of my videos, please.